Hello guys, and welcome back to another video. Sorry this video was delayed, but hey, at least it's out now. So today we will be going over the General Electric Genesis locomotives. This includes the GE P42 Dc, the GE P32 Ac and the GE P40 Dc. Anyways, let's get into it. Passenger railroads in the early/mid-90s was still in development, as most railroads were using aging equipment such as E and F units, but most of the equipment was F40s built in the late 1970s. Amtrak turned to General Electric, who was a popular locomotive manufacturer company at the time, and they came up with a locomotive known as the AMD-103, but as most people call it, the P40 Dc. What did P40 Dc and AMD-103 stand for? The P in P40 Dc stood for passenger, 40 for 4,000 horsepower, and DC for DC traction motors equipped in the locomotive. The A in AMD 103 stood for Amtrak, M for monocoque, D for diesel, and 103 for 103 miles per hour it was capable of. Some stats of the P40 DC was that it was built only in 1993. I could be wrong with that, because that's quite a short period of time. Their top speed is 103 miles per hour. They have a GE 7FDL-16 cylinder engine. They have 4,000 horsepower. Came in at a weight of 268,240 pounds. The length was 69 feet 0 inches, height of 14 feet 4 inches, and a width of 10 feet 0 inches. They came equipped with a Nathan K5LA or K5L. Here's a few examples. Amtrak's order of P40 DCs came about in 1992, but didn't start being constructed until 1993. Until they entered service, GE built 20 passenger modified Dash 8 locomotives. The P40 would replace the F40s and fill in for F59 PHIs and assist at Dash 8s on Amtrak California services and many other services. 44 of the P40 DC locomotives were built, with numbers between 800 and 843. The P40 DC's body would use a monocoque body, also known as single shell body, but if these units ever got in a derailment, the repairs would be pretty expensive. The units would be 14 inches shorter than the F40 PHs, and were designed for high speeds. It would be 22% more fuel efficient than the F40s. It was completely computerized to increase safety and decrease maintenance costs. The head-end power system could power up to 16 Superliner coaches. But sadly, these were limited to only 79 miles per hour due to track restrictions. As they entered the P40 DCs had more horsepower, meant that less engines were needed on long-distance services. Two F40 PHs equaled the amount of power a single P40 DC had. Amtrak liked these locomotives as they were more sleek, faster, and more efficient than the F40s, and the replacement process soon started for the F40s. But it wasn't common to see 1 to 2 F40s trailing behind a P40 on trains. That was the same case as on September 22nd, 1993 in Mobile, Alabama. In the early morning hours, the Sunset Limited was running late with P40 Dc 819 leading and F40s 262 and 312 trailing. At a bridge ahead on the line, a ship hit the bridge and misaligned the bridge. At 70 miles per hour, the Sunset Limited hit the bridge, sending the train into the air and crashing into the river. Fuel from the locomotives ran into the river, setting the coaches ablaze. This accident is still Amtrak's worst derailment, with 42 dead and 103 injured. After the accident, the P40 still kept going into service and replacing the F40s in all of their trains. But in 1995, a new Genesis locomotive came about. In 1995, Amtrak and Metro-North ordered P40 DCs with slightly different specifics and tuning. This was known as the GE P32 ACDM. Amtrak ordered 18 of those, or numbering between 700 and 717, and Metro-North ordered 21, numbering from 201 to 231. These units were used in the Northeast around the New York City and New York State area. These units were equipped with third rail equipment to run out of New York Penn Station due to the Amtrak station being underground and Metro-North having to run through a long tunnel out of Grand Central. What did P32 ACDM stand for? The P stood for passenger, 32 for 3,200 horsepower, AC for alternating current, and DM for dual mode. Some specs of the P32 ACDM is that it was built in 1995. It had a top speed of 110 miles per hour, but was limited to 79 miles per hour. The engine they used was a GE 7FDL 12-cylinder engine. It had 3,200 horsepower. Came in at a weight of 274,400 pounds. Came in at a length of 69 feet 0 inches, height of 14 feet 4 inches, and a width of 10 feet 0 inches. They had a Nathan K5LA or Nathan K5L horns, just like the P40 DCs. The Metro-North P32 ACDMs ran typical commuter and express services on the entire system, while Amtrak's ran, on the entire Metro-North system, while Amtrak's ran the Empire services between New York City and Niagara Falls, New York, Ethan Allen Express services between Rutland, Vermont, and New York City, the Lakeshore Limited between Albany and New York City, the Adirondack between New York City and Montreal, Quebec. But due to the certain virus going around right now, that I don't believe this service is running until further notice, and the Maple Leafs between Toronto and New York City. But due to the certain virus, they've been classified as Empire services until further notice. The P32 ACDMs really haven't experienced any big accidents due to them being put in a really small area, but that can change at any moment. The P32 ACDMs have recently undergone a rebuild program. Only two remain to be rebuilt. Those being 708 went to Beech Grove, Indiana shops in August, but hasn't been seen since, along with 706, which is still in service in Phase 5 paint scheme with the classic number boards. Another new locomotive. In 1996, there was a new locomotive built for the Genesis series. This was the final locomotive, though, for the series of locomotives. This was known as the P42, or not the P32, the P42 Dc, which are numbered 1 through 207. Some stats of the P42 Dc. It was built between 1996 and 2001. It had a top speed of 110 miles per hour. It had a GE 7FDL 16-cylinder engine. It had 4,250 horsepower. It came in at a weight of 268,240 pounds. Its length was 69 feet, 0 inches, a height of 14 feet, 4 inches, and a width of 10 feet, 0 inches. This also had a Nathan K5LA or Nathan K5L horn. Here are a few examples. The P42s have seen lots of accidents, so I don't want to go over all of them. But besides all those, the P42 DCs have seen frequent use on the long distance and intercity trains. In 2001, the Canadians took notice of the P42 DC, also known as Via Rail, and ordered 21 of these locomotives to replace their aging fleet of F40s, GP40TCs, LRCs, and 1950 ELE units. In 2005, 8 Amtrak P40s were released to ConDOT for operations on Short Line East and Metro North, and later sold to them in 2008. New Jersey Transit in 2007 acquired 4 rebuilt Amtrak P40 DCs in the P42 DC standards, but later sold to ConDOT in 2015. P40s on Amtrak. In 2009, Amtrak upgraded 15 P40 DCs in the P42 standards. The remaining 29 were left in storage out of service in Beech Grove, Indiana shops. But they were either sold or scrapped to a few years later. On May 1st, 2011, Amtrak turned 40 years old, and to honor that, they made 6 heritage units. One of those was an NPCU, which we will cover in a future episode. Amtrak 156 was one of them, which is a Phase 1 heritage unit. Sadly, it derailed and is no longer in service and was replaced. Amtrak 145 and Amtrak 822. Phase 3 heritage units. Amtrak 822 is out of service. 145 was in a wreck but got back in service. Amtrak 184, which is the Phase 4 heritage unit, and Amtrak 130, which is the Phase 2 heritage unit, which replaced the original Phase 2 heritage unit, which was Amtrak 66, but it got in a train versus truck accident and is not repairable. On May 1st, 2021, Amtrak turned 50 years old, so they painted 7 heritage units. One was an ACS 64 and one was a new ALC 42, which will be covered in a future both will be covered in future episodes. The rest are P42 Dcs. First one is Amtrak 46, which is a normal paint scheme, but is got like a little sticker on the side, as you see in the top right. Amtrak 100, which is the midnight blue 50th year unit, which is in the bottom left, in the bottom middle, if you can see it. Amtrak 161, which is phase 1. It also replaced 156. You can see it a lot here, obviously. Amtrak 160, which is my favorite paint scheme, the Dash 8 Phase 3 paint scheme. And Amtrak 108, which is a future Phase 6 paint scheme. Miscellaneous Amtrak units. Amtrak painted many other units that are non-heritage units, more like special interest, but we'll only go over the Genesis locomotives, the rest in the future episodes. One of those is Amtrak 42, which is the veterans paint scheme. It is a P42 Dc, but no longer in service due to many faulty issues with it. Amtrak 157 and 197, both are big game train units, and P42 Dc 197 was involved in a truck versus train accident with extreme body damage, and 157 was also involved but with very minimal damage. 197's status is unknown at the moment. He is known to be in Beech Grove, Indiana right now, though. But we do not know if he's going to get scrapped or put back in service. Finally, Amtrak 203. It was recently painted into a pretty interesting paint scheme to commemorate the Operation Lifesaver program. The P42 Dc, along with its twins, proved great reliability for several years back now, but are now being threatened to be put out of service by a new locomotive and locomotive manufacturer in the U.S. The SC44 ALC42 Chargers, along with a ALC42 multiple unit. These futuristic and ugly locomotives are being put into service along Amtrak corridor services such as the Cascades, Midwest, and Amtrak California services. Brightline also bought Chargers, but modified to be more streamlined and looked like a high-speed train, like from Britain. The Genesis locomotives are at least over 20-plus years old now, and their life seems to be short now, but you can see them until about 2030 when Amtrak announced their new roster replacement program. Not only the Genesis, but other locomotives such as the Dash 8 and ACS 64 are being threatened out of service / limited down on services. But the Genesis locomotives have served railroads quite well these last few decades. They will always and still are part of the history book of successful locomotives in the world. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Engines of the World. If you did, make sure to leave a like and a comment below. If you guys have any suggestions for future episodes, make sure to leave them down in the comments below. Or you could go join my Discord server, which will be in the link below in the description. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to leave a like. If you haven't already considered, make sure to subscribe to the channel and make sure you don't miss out on future episodes. If you guys pictures and videos, make sure to join my Discord server for that. And as always, I will see you guys in the next episode. Take care.